Great singer and cultural icon that is Brenda Fassie always named the Soul Brothers as one of her inspirations and the band she was listening to most of the time. That alone should tell you how immense the impact of the biggest Umbaqanga outfit on the industry and music lovers alike. With the passing of the co-founder and frontman of the band, David Masondo, making headlines this week, everything from the group's financial struggles to their personal lives, right up to how handsome he was, have become topical. Today, though, we have invited someone who has focused his life and career to South African music and how it has influenced our cultural landscape. Now, tell us more about David Masondo's professional contribution to the craft is, of course, David Coplan, and he's a Professor Emeritus in the Social Anthropology Unit at the University of the Witwatersrand. Professor, good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thanks very much.
Let's talk about what weight do album sales like that hold? I mean, we spoke about how 350,000 copies every album of theirs, that is the Soul Brothers, and 200,000 copies. Elaborate on the value of the achievement. How much weight does album sales like that hold?
Well, today, of course, it holds a lot because we don't sell so many albums these days in the music industry. Back in the day, of course, when they started, musicians actually made most of their money from recordings and could become very rich. But nowadays, with the internet and so forth, there isn't really a business model that allows the companies to make a huge amount of money from CDs and so on, so performances is king. And yet, despite that, they were so unique and so attached to their audience that the Soul Brothers continued to sell albums even after a time when many other artists were basically on the road most of the time to make a living.
Let's talk about David Masondo being the glue that kept, the Soul Brothers together. How much of that do we know?
Well, I didn't really know him too closely personally, but I think they all played a role. Of course, Moses Ngwenya and so on, bringing in the keyboard sound and so on, and David at the front and so on. I always think of them as being one of these really unitary bands where everybody played a crucial role. And so with all the respect to David himself, I think really it was in keeping this group together and always rehearsing, always working on their sound as a unit that made their sound so convincing and so consistent over the years. So let's say he was very much a team player to my way of thinking.
What do you think is going to be their legacy going forward?
Well, you see, in my view, sometimes we don't get our terms exactly right. At the university, that's what we do. We get our terms right. But anyway, I mean, they started saying, oh, well, this is Maskanda, but it wasn't Maskanda. Maskanda is the Zulu guitar music, Puzu Kimisi and Ihashim Plopi and so on. And then they said, well, I did Umbaqanga, but when we think of Umbaqanga, we think of Mahlatini and the Queens and with the Groaners and so on. They really invented a unique form. We used to call it Soweto Soul or Township Soul and so on, African Soul, that really took over that middle area for not only city people, but people who were still very attached to the local culture and the local languages and the local music. And they had a tremendously loyal following because of that. There used to be a TV show here on SATV, Ezodumo, remember, and then it was replaced by Roots. But for years we used to watch on Ezodumo, and I think the majority of groups that ever appeared there were doing the Soul Brothers style. All male, fancy shirts and shoes, and very, very natty get-up, and very Joburg, but still, very Zulu in its way. And some of the hits that they had, just went on and on. I still play them for my students in Tate Waka and these things. I still play them. So it was. I'm not sure what you call it, because it was them. They pioneered, and the other groups followed, and then we saw, they're on Ezodumo over the years, dozens of groups doing the Soul Brothers sound. So you could almost say they invented a style, which maybe we're still searching for a name for it.
And what can young outfits who are in the industry learn from the Soul Brothers?
Well, I think the kind of, what I mentioned, almost a humility in no one in the group standing out so much that, this is the big star. Because when you do that, then the big star goes off on his own for his own solo thing, and they break up and they reform, and it is much more difficult to have that label, that continuous sound that everybody knows this is them, and to continuously produce great music over a time. Another example, Ladysmith Black Mambazo. I mean, you will never mistake them for anyone else, you know, in this Tratamia, because they work together like a family. And in their era and in their genre, the Soul Brothers really did this, stayed together, and they stayed together with their fans. I mean, there's a tremendous loyalty aspect there, which I think is very South African in a way. You know, you're supposed to stick with things and not be trailing off to something else every day.
All right. Professor, thank you so much for talking to us,
Right.
speaking to us about the immeasurable contribution of David Masondo to SA Music as Professor Emeritus in the Social Anthropology Unit at the University of the Witwatersrand. David Coplan Masondo was the co-founder and frontman of Umbaqanga group Soul Brothers. He died on Sunday at the age of 65. May soul rest in peace. Let's take a break. Stay with us.